Welcome back, hacker. Today we are going to be talking about CSS classes. But first, let's go over what we've already learned about CSS. We've learned that there are properties, we learned how to target, and I gave you a challenge, and let's go over that challenge and get the answer. So the challenge is that you were supposed to create a code pen that has an H1 tag and a paragraph tag. The H1 tag was going to have a color of tomato and a font size of 24. And then the paragraph was going to have a font size of 16 and a color of purple. And your goal was to do this 3 times and to time yourself while you're doing this to see if you got faster. So let's try this. So for some review, we already know that to create an HTML tag, you start with the less than symbol. So I'm going to say less than H1 tag, and then I'm going to say title. And then I'm going to map name and stop it. Then I am going to create a paragraph, same thing, paragraph. And then I'm going to stop that paragraph as well. That should become second nature probably by now for us, hopefully. Next step we're going to do is we're going to add in our design, our CSS. So again, we have the framework now. We have the house built here in our HTML. And now let's add some color to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to target the H1. So the way I do this is just by typing H1. It's whatever is to the right of this less than sign, which is the H1 right here. Then I'm going to do space and then mustache brackets. And I'm going to use the color property. So I'm going to say, hey, browser, I want to change the color. What do I want to change it to? Well, it's whatever is after this colon right here. And I want to change this to tomato. And then semicolon to end that line. The next line, I'm going to do font size. The next attribute I want to change is the font size. And I'm going to change this to 24 pixels and then end that. And now that's all in the mustache bracket. So that is just applied to the H1. And next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come down here. Same thing for the paragraph. I'm targeting the paragraph. Then I'm doing the mustache brackets. I want to change the color of this to purple and the font size to 16 pixels. And there you have it. It's that simple. Coding's not that hard, right? You are able to do this. I know you can do this. So let's keep adding on to our knowledge. Next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to be talking about CSS classes. So I'm going to explain some of this. You can work alongside it. And again, at the end of this, we're going to have a challenge for you to work on. So let's go ahead and get into this. I'm going to create a new pin for this explanation. Now, let's say that we have a page that has multiple paragraphs and we want all of the paragraphs to look similar, but then we want to alter one ever so slightly. So let's make an example of this. So I'm going to create a paragraph. I'm going to say test 1. And I'm going to copy and paste this a couple times. Again, if you're doing this, I want you to type this out, but this is just to speed things up for this demo. Now I have my paragraphs and I'm going to make some changes to the color. So I'm going to say color, let's say blue. Might be kind of hard to see, but let's do it. Font size, and then we'll make this bigger, 50 pixels. Okay. So we have these 3 paragraphs. Now what happens is what would happen if I want to change this last one to be, rather than having it be blue, I want it to be purple. Or let's go with yellow, something drastic. Tomato. I could, inline, do style equals color tomato. And that'll override it. But again, if my client calls and they want to change all of these colors of tomato on multiple pages to something else, and I have to go into all these files and have to change all these things, and that's no fun. So another way to do this is we can use a thing called a class. This is, again, a property. A property is describing how this paragraph is, and this is called a class property. And we're going to do it the same way with the equal sign, just as we would like with an href. And I'm going to name it something like highlight. And this is hard. We can name these classes whatever we want. One of the hardest principles of CSS and programming in general and HTML is naming and naming conventions. And we'll go into this later on. But I'm going to have this class, and I'm equaling it to a highlight. Now, what this allows me to do is it allows me to, in my CSS, target this very specific paragraph. And the way I do this is I'm going to put in a period sign. So period in CSS means class. And I'm going to type out the same word, highlight. So it has to match exactly this right here. Then I'm going to do mustache brackets, and I'm going to do color tomato. So what this is doing is it's going to all these paragraphs, it's loading this color of blue, and it's setting the font size to 50. Then it notices that I have additional information about this very particular, right here, this test 3, this particular paragraph. So what am I going to do? I'm going to override some stuff. What am I overriding? I'm overriding this color to tomato. Now, again, these periods means class. Class is like this. There's another item that's called an ID. An ID is indicated, and I'm going to is indicated with a hashtag or pound symbol. And I'll change this name to highlight class just so we can make sure we see the difference. And I'll change that to 10 pixels. So now I have it where the paragraph is being loaded, it's loading this class, and it's adding this ID right here. And it's making everything smaller. Now, I can add this ID to other items, but this is very important for you to know, is that you are only actually supposed to have one ID per page. So, meaning I'm not supposed to have, see how I have highlight ID here and highlight ID here? It's written out twice. That's actually improper code, especially when you're getting into JavaScript. This is a no-no. So this is actually not supposed to be this way. Again, how I told you way back a couple lessons ago about best practices and principles, especially like when it comes to only having one H1 tag on a page. Same thing here. You only want to have this ID. It's listed twice. It should only actually be listed once. So if I got rid of this here, then now all of a sudden the code is proper. But I just wanted to show you that these IDs are this hashtag mark. I would recommend staying away from them until we get into JavaScript. Now you might be asking though, okay, well what happens though, Miles, if I want to have multiple overrides, like how you change the size of that one? So let's check this out. The cool thing about classes is that you can actually chain classes together. So what I mean by that is I have highlight there. So let me create another class called small. I'm going to say font size 10 pixels. So here I have class, and then in there I have one class which is highlight. And if I add a space and I hit small, it's going to add these two classes together. So now I have this tomato, which is the color, and then small, which is the size. So that would allow me, let's say on this second one right here, I wanted to change the size of this. I can say class equals small. So now this one will be blue, but it'll have that smaller text. So these are ways that you can override your code and your design, and you can see how powerful this turns out, right? So you can apply these to all sorts of things. You can apply them to lists, and you can apply them to backgrounds and to divisions, which we'll go over later. So I'll give you one more example of this. Let's do this with an unordered list. So I'm going to copy these. Again, if you are doing this for the first time, I would recommend that you type it out. I'm just doing this to speed up so that way you don't have to sit through all of this for longer. So now I have an unordered list, and I have this class of highlight. So if I wanted to change this highlight here to a different background, I'm going to say class, period, highlight, background, yellow. Now there are ways to target based on the tag and to chain them together even further. So let's say I put paragraph highlight. Okay, so now check this out. And I'm just introducing this to you, so don't worry, we'll go over this over and over again. Here I have a little bit more complicated of CSS. I have this li, so first I'm going to this item right here, this li. Then I'm adding the class, so whatever this class is. So I'm looking for, basically the CSS is looking for a list item. Okay, this is a list item and this is a list item. But it's looking for a list item. Notice that there's no space here. It's right next to it. It's on it. So spaces mean it's under. So that would mean that this would be actually somewhere here. So spaces mean it's inside, but together means that they're married together. They're a couple. So I have a couple here. So I'm having a list item. It's finding a list item, and it's looking for the class that has highlight, because again, period equals highlight. Then I have the background, so I'm changing that background to yellow. The difference here is I have a background, a paragraph with a class of highlight. So I'm looking for a paragraph class of highlight, and that's green. So another way to look at this would be as if I had this class like so. I can go anchor tag. So now I have an anchor tag that goes to test.com. I don't know if that's a real site or not. But here I have, again, unordered list. Inside there I have a list item, a highlight. So I have here in my CSS is highlight, but notice that there's not a selector in front of it. There's not a particular tag. So it says background yellow. Here, there is a particular tag in front of it, which is paragraph. So it's overriding and it's saying change this to green. Now below, again, I'm not having this being an anchor, so this isn't a paragraph, so it defaults to this highlight. If I wanted to override this to, let's say, be background of red, I can say anchor tag highlight background red. So I just want to show you that you can chain these together. Now here's a challenge, and I know this is a lot, but it's okay. You're going to get through it. You're learning, you know how far you've come. You can keep going. Here's our challenge. I want you to create an unordered list that has 3 items. 1 item with a class of highlight. Have the background of this list item be yellow. Have the font size of all list items be 24. So you're going to have a list. One of them is going to be highlighted with the background of yellow, but all of them are going to be a font size of 24. Then I want you to create 2 paragraphs with a font size of 10 pixels. Have the background have the color of the text be white and the background of black. So white text, black background. Create a 3rd paragraph that has all the same properties. So it's going to have same white font and black background. And I want you to change this one though using additional class where the font size is 16. Now, I know this is a lot, but I believe in you because programming is not that hard. You got this. If you get stuck, don't worry. Reach out to the community, and always in the next video, we will have those answers for you. Keep going. You got this, and I'll see you in the next lesson.